Hello, this is Dave Sugarbaker, and today is the 17th day of May 2026, and I have a long reading that goes before the sermon today. This is a very familiar reading. This is the story of the prodigal son, or as I prefer to call it, the story of the waiting father. Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me.' So he divided his property between the 2 of them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed the pigs. He would have gladly filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare, while I am dying of hunger? I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was yet still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now, his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come home, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" I believe the story of Jesus healing the man possessed with a legion of evil spirits was prized and repeated in the earliest Christian community because it was the real-life encounter that led to one of Jesus' best-loved teaching stories, the story of the waiting father and his 2 lost boys. The one boy, a hell-raising, rules-breaking younger son, and the other, his obsessive, angry, Pharisaic older brother. I have no way to prove this. This is my assumption. But one of my heroes, Clarence Jordan, a New Testament scholar and a Georgia agriculturalist, believed this as well. I believe the man possessed by a legion of unclean spirits, whom Jesus healed, became a protagonist in Jesus' prodigal son story. He was the younger son, the one who demanded that his father divide his assets and give him the portion that was due to him. This younger boy takes his portion of his father's assets and goes to a foreign country where he makes every bad choice that he can make, and he squanders his inheritance. In the parable, Jesus says times got tough for the Jewish boy in a foreign land. There was a famine, and when he ran out of money, the boy took a job feeding pigs. Feeding and taking care of pigs isn't a job for a good Jewish boy, but there he was. He would have liked to eat the pig's food. He was that hard up. He was hopelessly alienated from his Jewish background, separated by his choices, not only from his Jewish family, but also from the Gentiles around him. He didn't fit in anywhere. And the story says no one gave him anything. And now at this point in the parable, we shift from the parable to the real-life encounter that Jesus had. The Gospel of Mark is the earliest and the shortest of the Gospels, and yet the story of the man with a demon called Legion is longer and more detailed in Mark than it is in Matthew or Luke. This must have been an important story in the earliest Christian church, worth telling and retelling in detail. We hear Luke's version as I read this morning. Jesus and the disciples sailed to the southeastern shore of the Sea of Galilee. The area was known as the Decapolis, an area of 10 cities. This is not Jewish territory. One of the good clues is the big herd of 2,000 pigs on the hillside beside the lake. As Jesus steps out of the boat, a man possessed by a demon or many demons approaches. Mark says the man has an unclean spirit. He's living in the tombs carved into the hillside. The man is out of control. No one can restrain him. They've tried, and he breaks the shackles and the chains. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always howling. We have a clue as to the origins of the man. He's Jewish. How do we know? Well, Mark says he's bruising himself with stones. Now that's pretty weird from our 21st century perspective. What is it with those stones? Another translation says he was cutting himself with stones. By the time of Jesus, both bronze and iron knives were available, but flint was still used in the circumcision of a male Jewish infant. The possessed Jewish man cutting himself with stones may have been trying to recircumcise himself, trying to feel part of the Jewish community again after breaking so many Jewish laws to keep, nobody could keep count of the number of Jewish laws he'd broken. Mark says, when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him. In Mark's gospel, Jesus repeatedly encounters spirits who know exactly who Jesus is, while the disciples remain clueless. In Mark, this is known as the Messianic secret. The possessed man shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you, by God, do not torment me." Jesus had already ordered the spirit to leave the man. Now, if not inhabiting the man, where will the spirit be? The spirit doesn't want to be sent into nothingness. And Jesus asked the spirit its name, and it says, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Now that's an understatement. In the Roman army, a legion would have been between 4,000 and 6,000 soldiers, broken down into centuries of about 80 men each. Each century had a leader called a centurion. We know that term. Jesus makes the legion of unclean spirits go away, and he makes the pigs go away. They all run down the hill, having been inhabited by the bad spirit, and they all run into the lake and they're drowned. The healing message to the possessed man was, "You're more important than any number of sides of bacon and pork tenderloins. They don't matter, you do." The point is, the man is healed. The townfolk come back to find the man clothed and in his right mind. Now, where did the naked possessed man from the tombs get clothes? Well, I think the clothes came from the backs of the disciples. It was part of the healing process. Jesus and the disciples built bridges to this man. They incorporated him back into a circle of abundantly alive human beings. No more living in the tombs with the already dead. They convinced him that he was worth it. It's hard to tell if the townspeople and the owners of the large herd of now deceased pigs were impressed to see the healed man clothed and in his right mind. They may have been more impressed with the price of healing the guy, and the price was their whole herd of pigs. The reading says that they were seized with great fear. And if one healed lunatic cost them a couple thousand pigs, they couldn't really afford much of that sort of mental health. The local people invite Jesus and the disciples to get back in the boat and go back to where they came from ASAP. They don't want any more healings in their territory. It's just might cost too many pigs. The man who had the demon called Legion wants to go back to Galilee with Jesus and the disciples. But Jesus said, "Go home. Go home." At this point, we switch to Jesus' story of the waiting father, the prodigal son story. And the story says, when he came to himself, he said, "I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of the hired hands.'" Now, reading the parable carefully, we hear the whole apology speech that the son prepares to deliver to his father, but the father can't be bothered to hear it all. He interrupts and orders the welcome party for his returned boy to be arranged for. The parable of the prodigal son is really about the father who waits and waits and waits. He gets the first boy back as if from the dead. The story ends with the father still waiting for his righteous, keep your nose clean, score-keeping older son to stop pouting and come into the party. The parable of the waiting father is a kind of a stealth parable. It seems straightforward, but as the description of the elder brother unfolds, I can imagine the Pharisees in the audience getting a little uncomfortable. How happy were they with the rules-breaking younger brother having been welcomed back to the household? We have to remember, as human beings, our choices carry their own reward or punishment. The prodigal doesn't get another share of the inheritance. He's blown his share. He doesn't get more. But he gets a welcome home party. a ring for his finger, the best robe, and new sandals. The younger son separated himself from his father, and he blows it big time, and then he gets it together, and he returns to his father in humility. The older brother never left home, never broke the rules, but at the end of the story, he is separated from his father just as profoundly as his younger brother was. He has isolated himself from both his father and his brother. Wow. Could it be that rules breaking and self-righteousness can both separate us from the love of the Father? Could it be that by not welcoming my pig food eating brother back into the family, I could find myself estranged from the Father? When will the Father give up on his children? Never. How long will the Father wait? As long as it takes. This is what makes God different from us human beings. Paul says, love never ends. God's love lasts as long as necessary. God searches and waits as long as it takes. Now, God bless you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this. If you find value in it, I hope you'll pass it along. And in any case, I'll see you soon. Take care.